As an organization, the Warriors are committed to promoting civic engagement and voter education through our Voters Win campaign. And through this initiative, we utilize our platform to provide resources to educate our fans and the members of our organization, and we encourage them to use their voice to vote. So please tell us a little bit about yourself, and maybe along the way, you could tell us a little bit about what the Secretary of State does.
Well, thank you for having me here today, and I'm really excited about the Warriors' mission and the engagement with voting as well as civic education, which is so extremely important. I'm California's Secretary of State, but more than that, I'm a daughter of a sharecropper from Hope, Arkansas. And my father was never allowed to vote because of the discrimination in the South until he came to California. And my grandfather never voted his entire life. So when my family came to California, the first thing they wanted to do was to register to vote and be engaged. And so I've been an advocate for voting for all of my life because I know what happened in Arkansas when folks couldn't vote. And I know the peril that they suffered as a result of not having a voice. And so I've done that all of my life to push things forward, to make things better, I think. And in 2020, the governor basically appointed me, nominated me to be Secretary of State. And the Secretary of State's office is the third constitutional office in the state of California. There are only 8 of us and 8 constitutional officers. And my task is to make sure that one, I am the state's official officer for voting. So I handle all elections in the state of California, but I also handle all the businesses in California so that anyone who is basically registering a business, registered with my office. We're in charge of all of the notaries in California. We do political reform. So it's a huge operation of about 500 or 600 people that the Secretary of State is involved in. And no document becomes official without either my signature or the seal of California.
Wow, everyone wants to be so proud of you and the way how far you've come. You just talked about how your legacy, the people that your ancestors could not even vote. And now you're in charge of voting.
Yes, it's kind of ironic. I tell people that my father never had a chance to vote. My grandfather never had a chance to vote. And here I am, the granddaughter, responsible for 40 million voters, the largest voting base in the United States. Wow. So it's kind of an interesting story to get to this point.
Okay, so I'm a new voter.
Yes, you are.
Myself. And do you have a question for me?
Why not? Yes, I want to know. They tell me that that you're a new voter.
That's right.
And your first time voting. What do you think about it?
So I became a citizen of the United States in 2019. And originally I was born and raised in Nigeria. I went through the whole naturalization process from, applying to all the payments and lawyers and documents. It took me about 10 years to become a citizen. And when I swore the oath of allegiance to the United States, it meant something to me. So I could not miss out on my first opportunity to vote in 2020, even though at the time I lived in Germany. Mm-hmm. So I had to go through the mail-in ballot system, which when I found out about this, I thought it was incredible because it gives an opportunity to people who can't go to a polling station or who can't be there. And to me in Germany, I found out that you can vote up till the day of the election, as long as your ballot is postmarked before the day of the election, and it can get there up to 7 days after the election day. So all that was really important, and it made it very efficient for me to vote. Mm-hmm. I felt very proud. Good. Because I understand the history, and I've learned through the years the history of people. And I know that people have fought and died for the right for us to vote.
Yes, and voting is so extremely important. Even all during the civil rights era, many things were offered to African Americans. They were offered jobs. They were offered various other programs. But Martin Luther King always insisted that voting was important and the Voting Rights Act was important. And he refused to accept anything other than the Voting Rights Act that was passed in 1965, because it's just that important and that powerful.
Do you remember your first time voting?
I do. And it's really strange. My family is so deeply into voting. The funny part is that I voted in my living room. Wow. And because my mother ran the polls in our neighborhood. And when they didn't have a place to actually go vote, because we didn't have a library nearby and we didn't have a rec center and all those kinds of things in South Central LA, my mother opened our living room and our house became a polling place. And so when we can vote till we're 21, but when I turned 21, I had registered to vote and I got a chance to vote in my mother and father's living room to have my first voting experience,
You're an
and
incredible
it's great.
example
Yeah,
there as your mom.
my mom and my dad, they made our house a polling place. And when I was in junior high, I'd have to walk down the driveway because everybody was in the living room voting. And my mother did that until she died. She believed in voting, and my dad helped her, and so our place became the place where people go vote. And the flag was hung out, and all the ballots were brought to our house, and then my father helped them take it downtown LA. But it was an important experience for them, and I've never forgotten that. And there are 8 of us as kids, and we have voted in every election.
My question though, because I had experience with this, how did voting by mail, how did it affect the voter turnout?
Well, it had a positive effect on it, because people had hesitation. They didn't want to vote by mail. They didn't want to do this. They didn't want to do that. But when COVID came in, COVID made voting by mail necessary. And as a result, after I became Secretary of State and I called various registrar voters and I said, what do you think about voting? They said it was amazing. It was amazing to have people vote by mail. Everyone gets a ballot that they can use in the mail, and you should have all gotten your ballots by now. I got mine last week. So everybody should have a ballot. You can take that ballot and you can mail it back. You can take that ballot, you can take it to the registrar voter's office. You can take it to what they call a ballot box place and do it there. I normally go to my library down the hill from my house, but you can do that. And then you can also go in person, because a lot of folks just like to be there to see the experience of voting and feel the folks that are there and say hello to their neighbors who are still running the polls. So we have so many ways that you can vote, and all of those options that are available to you. But we have every person in California who is a registered voter will get a vote by mail ballot.
Beautiful. What is a primary election and why is it important?
Well, when you have a primary, like we're going to have one on March the 5th, that's the first part of the election process. And everyone should participate, because what happens in the primary is the people who are going to actually be the ones running for office are chosen. So if you choose not to participate in the primary, then you're basically saying, I'll let somebody else choose my choices. And maybe the person you really wanted didn't get out of the primary, and therefore they will not be in the general election. So the primary is as important as a general election, because it really hones it down and picks out the folks that we're going to have basically running for the office in November.
What is the direct impact that my vote will have in California?
The direct impact is that it is your voice. If you want to make an impact in any way, the only way you can really successfully make it is through voting, because it tells people, one, that you're interested, that you're going to be present, that you're going to hold them accountable because you're using your voice, your ballot to do so. And people dismiss you when you're not a voter. I've been in elected positions like at the school board, and when you have a community that does not vote, people don't pay them much attention, because you can't even keep the person that you like in office because you can't vote. And so what happens, the communities that have 20 and 30% turnout are generally ignored when it comes to the city council, the school boards, and all those kinds of things, and how money is distributed. People respect those who vote. And I tell folks, you become a 5 out of 5 voter, every politician in the world will call your name. Because when you're 5 out of 5, that means in the last 5 elections, which was like a primary and maybe a general election, they said you voted. And they know that come hell or high water, you're going to go to the polls because you're a 5 out of 5 voter. If you're 1 out of 5, if the weather changes, you're not going. If anything happens that day, you may not show up. Nobody can count on you. But if you're 5 out of 5 voters, say to the public, hey, you are important, and every politician will listen to you and figure out what your needs are.
I want you guys to make sure that you heard that properly. If you vote, you don't get ignored. Communities that don't vote, the politicians are not paying attention to them. And that's really important for us to know that.
It's extremely important.
So that's how your vote can count and the way that you can change your community.
Yes.
I think you have a question for me.
Yes. Tell us something about how you're voting in terms of what the primary election is. But what do you think is important for people to actually vote? Why do you think it's important? What do you do? What do you think causes people to vote?
Well, for one, I think it's important because people have fought for this right. And the idea that you can change circumstances, you could put the people in office who care about you and care about your circumstances, and they make decisions on your jobs, your job security,
Hmm.
taxes, your money that you make and where it goes, social security, and all the way down to healthcare, education, all the things that impacts our lives every day. When you vote, you can impact these things, and you have a chance to change. And there's been elections along the way that have been decided. I mean, you can think about Al Gore in 2000.
Hmm.
He lost to George W. Bush, and it was only when they did a recount, it was only 500 votes that
Yes,
made the difference.
right.
Situations like that make it so important for us to vote.
You know, I had a friend who won an election by 14 votes in San Diego
Wow.
and came to the legislature. She won by 14 votes. And she said, only thing she thought about was, gee, I'm sure glad I walked that last precinct. I was
Wow.
tired and started not to go on that block, but I walked that last precinct because
Wow.
they have been elections decided by 14 and 15 votes.
But it's so often that we're only reminded about the importance of vote is when it's an election year. What are the best ways to stay involved and informed through the years?
I always tell folks to get involved in your local politics. You know, it's nice to be involved in the national scene, but every city has a school board, has a city council, has a commission on water and whatever it may be. Stay involved. Get to know at least one of your elected officials on a personal basis so that you then are the person that they may call to get information from or to find out whether or not this is a good deal or not a good deal and what the public thinks. But be involved all year long. Campaigns go on all year. People should be involved in them, not just because it's somebody you like, but you want to push your candidate forward. You want to make sure that your school board knows what your issues are. You want to write letters to them or make calls and say, "Listen, I'm a citizen in this district, and I want to basically raise this issue about what's happening with kids and the park and rec." What happens is that when you start doing that, you realize that it's not only just the vote that's important, but it's your engagement that's important. And then you are able to pick folks who you think will basically deliver for you and your community. And you will then be the person that they call for information, for advice, for engagement. And that's important because you now have the ear of an elected official who's probably wondering, what should I do? Should I go right or left on this issue? And that person is calling you to get the information. And that's extremely important.
We're going to go rogue here a little bit because I would love to know an example of a situation where a community reached out and they stayed in personal contact with an official and it was able to make a change because of that.
You know, I had a student who who told me about an issue that happened on the campuses. And I wasn't in the legislature at the time, but it had to do with welfare and being able to use your food, your vote, your card that basically gets food, and how the campuses refuse to accept those food stamp cards. And this person would have to leave campus to try to find some food to eat because she had food insecurity. She told me about that. And when I came to the Capitol, she came up to work and volunteer in my office. We now have those ability to buy food and to have to respond to the food insecurity in every campus in California right now.
Wow.
She worked with me and we got it so that every EBT card now is in all of the Cal State campuses, the UC campuses, and many of our private institutions. And then we went from that into something else. So she got engaged and we basically changed a whole lot of things because of students being involved. I tell students all the time, they complain about their fees going up and this and that. Get involved with your legislator because if they don't hear from you, they assume everything is fine. But I've had students work with me on some cases and some issues and stayed on it and worked through when we got rejected and when we got it back again and we got it done. And I mean, all of those things. We got food banks on every campus now. So these students have worked with me who weren't engaged in politics at all. Wow. But we realized that they had an elected official who had a voice and they were going to work with me to get those things done. I had my community who was being basically done wrong with some solar energy, a poor community. And they had put solar on their homes and had been given misinformation, as well as the fact that they were trying to get appraisals done. And nobody would appraise their house effectively because even though they had solar on it. They came to me. I worked with that community. We worked for 2 years and we got the change done in terms of how to do appraisal on houses that have solar energy.
Well, if you don't vote and you're not involved, they're going to think that everything is fine the way it is.
Well, you're a former NBA player, and I can tell by your height. Okay.
It's a dead giveaway, huh?
Dead giveaway, Festus. I can tell by your height. But and you're a role model in the communities that are here. What would you do to help? What does it mean to you to have a responsibility to do some things that are outside of playing ball?
Well, I think the voice of athletes all around is at an all-time high. People respect and they see them as role models. You have people like Stephen Curry, our very own right here, and
Hmm.
Steve Kerr, who speak about important issues, about civic engagement, like making sure people come out to vote. The NBA went out of his way last season for the first time ever on election day. They said there would be no basketball games on election day because they wanted to increase voter turnout. Matter of fact, they went a step further and said that the day before election day, they would have all 30 teams play because they wanted to make sure that they sent the message that everyone needs to go out there and vote. So it's just electing and using the voice that we have, using our platforms to help people understand the responsibility that they have in the communities and just making a positive impact and speaking on important issues all around.
Well, surely when the NBA decided not to play on election day was a powerful statement.
It
It
was.
was a powerful statement, and you're to be praised as a not only the teams but the whole league to say this is an important activity that we will not play today because we want you to know just how important it was. And I know some of the stadiums open up their facilities for voting polls
That's
and
right.
things of that nature.
Mhm.
Voting is important to everybody, and so it's always encouraging when young people look and see that even their basketball players who they think have everything in the world they want are making voting a priority.
Well, I think it's important for anyone who has a platform to use that to the benefit of the community.
Hmm.
We have people who came before us. Bill Russell would have turned 90 years old yesterday,
Yes.
and he was an amazing example of someone who used his platform to fight for the civil rights of
Hmm.
others. So this is how we continue to use our platform to make the community better, the community that we want. We can't just complain about it.
You're
We
right.
have to find ways to make it
And you
better.
do. And you do.
My question to you, though, is what advice would you give young people who may be voting for the first time this year? Why should they continue to vote?
Well, first of all, make sure that you make a plan that you know that voting is a part of your day. You know, sometimes we decide, oh yeah, I got to vote sometime today, but you haven't figured out whether you're going to turn the ballot in or whether you're going to go into the polls or what's going to happen. Think about it as this is something important I'm going to do this day. Then once you have actually voted, start thinking about what changes you want in your community, who else you want to bring along to vote with you, who else you want to encourage to do, and how you want your elected officials to respond to you. Because now you voted, they're in office, whether you pick the right one or not, that's still your representative. And always think in those terms, what can I do to make this better as a result of interacting with that person? One of the things I've discovered when I first ran for office as school board member, I had a lot of my students, because I taught for 40 years at San Diego State. So I had a lot of my students come out and make signs and participated in phone banking, and they did everything. Those students are still politically engaged today. They saw how hard it was to get one vote, to get people to show up to do this thing, and they then committed themselves. So some of them now have run for office. Some of them are mayors of cities. Many of them still are involved in like youth programs in their community, and they see that as all as a part of an extension of how do you make the world better. You become a voter, you become an activist, and so don't take it as the only act and the final act. It is an important act. It puts an exclamation point on all the work that you're doing, but then you continue to work to make sure the things that you think are important can be done.
Wow, Secretary Weber, thank you so much. I feel like I learned so much. Thank you for joining us today. Is there anything else you want the voters to know this year about the election?
The main thing for them is to make a plan and be sure to vote. And call our office. We have a hotline if you don't have questions. If you have questions about where you should vote and who and you want to know where the polling places are and all those kinds of things, make sure you have March the 5th as a deadline to be able to vote. Take advantage of everything we have. We have an amazing website that people can go on the Secretary of State's website and see all the issues and concerns they have about voting, and they can get in touch with us on the hotline and we can give them information. We are there to serve you, and we're there to make sure that it's easy for you to vote and very convenient.
Thank you. Dub Nation, let's go out and vote. Tuesday, March the 5th. I'll see you all there, okay? Thank you so much, Secretary
Thank you.
Weber.
Thank you.